We've got some people still coming that haven't come, but we wanted to get started on time so that we can finish on time. And how many of you are new for the first time coming to anything Northwest of the Academy? Okay, great. All right. Some of you, I really appreciate how far some of you have come. Parents, we just think it's great today. We're so glad that you're here. And we've had people from Twin Falls and everything. I'm Elizabeth Allen Hodge. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Northwest Liberty Academy. Our mission is to advance the foundational principles of a free society and free enterprise. So what does that mean? Basically, what we do is we start with the premise on the proper role of government side, where we talk about the fact that our republic was founded on basic principles that our rights do not come from government, they come from our Creator. And so everything flows from that. I think it was Thomas Jefferson said, any government that's big enough to give you everything you want is powerful enough to take everything you have. So those are the things those are some of the principles on which we operate when we explain the process of government. Every year we have a 3.5-day symposium here in Boise, and we tour all 3 branches of government. And you get a chance to meet like our Secretary of State, one of our Supreme Court justices, the treasurer, and then several legislators that come as well. And you get to see how all 3 branches operate. So it's kind of a fun thing. We talk to you about those who might be interested in actually running for public office. We talk about a servant's heart and how when you do serve the people, what that means. Does it mean you give them everything they want? No, it means you follow the Constitution. So there's more to it, but that's basically the free society part of it. Come on in. If you have a hard time finding it, I'm glad you guys did it. Okay, so on the free enterprise part, which is the part that we get excited about, we're so happy to have Fee here. Before I go any further, would the youth ambassadors please stand up so that we can see them? Okay, good. All right. We and 3 of them will be introducing our speakers. Thank you, guys. These young people throughout the day, if you have any questions, they can tell you what we do at some of our functions. And this year we've got a lot more stuff planned. It's going to be a lot of fun. So on the free enterprise part of it, we teach you about free enterprise. We talk about entrepreneurism. We actually sponsor a children's business fair every year where children 6 to 14 get to be an entrepreneur for a day. Now some of you have said, well, what about those of us who are older that would like to do stuff? So we're working on that, on having an entrepreneur for a day where, how many of you have been out already jumped? Yes? Okay, we might be holding something there where the students can come in and set up shop for a day and we're working on that. The other program we're working on in the summer is called Unplugged, and it's a summer program for young people where we will probably have youth ambassadors and others who will help with the program, where it will be held in the park for 5 days. Unplugged is just what it says. Nobody's allowed to bring any device that has to be charged. So we're going to have a day camp for children where we teach them old-fashioned games like Red Rover and they'll play ball games, and we'll go inside and we'll do board games, but nothing that requires anything. And we're going to talk about civil discourse, talking to each other and visiting. And at the last day, the parents will be invited, it'll be on the Saturday, so that they can play games with the kids and have some of these games that you can take home and be able to interact and actually talk to each other. So, with that said, are there any questions at all? You know what? Throughout the day, too, we're going to have breaks, and we'll lunch. I need to know if anybody has a special dietary need because we're getting box lunches from Chick-fil-A. Everybody's full? Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure that we have them. So that being said, we can talk throughout the day at lunch and stuff. If you have any questions, seek out an ambassador. Alan, who's gone to get something, I don't know what, will be here and I'll be here. So I'd like to turn it over to the first youth ambassador, which is Callie Parent, and she's going to do an introduction for me. And we'd like you to really pay attention because this is just a real wonderful opportunity.
Good morning. My name is Callie Parent, and I'm a youth ambassador for the Northwest Liberty Academy. It is my pleasure to introduce our first presenter, Anna Jane Pearl. Anna Jane is a program manager at the Foundation for Economic Education and serves FEE through developing and implementing student programs and seminars. Anna Jane graduated from Tulane University with both a BA in Gender and Sexuality Studies and a BA in Economics. Prior to joining FEE, Anna Jane worked in private consulting as a senior financial analyst for the accounting and audit firm, Postlethwaite and Netterville. She also has experience developing programs for the Tulane Center for Wellness and Health Promotion, where she worked with college students in groups and one-on-one to create measurable change in health and behavior social norms. Anna Jane is passionate about education and social entrepreneurship, and she has a deep and abiding love for animals and tiny hats. Thank you.
I love tiny animals and tiny hats. My favorite. I'm very impressed that you got Postlethwaite and Netterville correctly. Those are two very difficult names to say. So I joined FEE in January. I've always been free markets are my passion. This is something that I absolutely love doing. I used to work in accounting, and I get to live my passion, which is very exciting. So I design our programs and run our programs here, along with a lot of our other awesome staff that you're going to meet today. So if you guys have any questions about FEE and what we do and all the amazing programs we have all across the country, just feel free to talk to me at any time. We are an open book. And I'm excited to see some cases that I have worked with already in the past. So I think without further ado, am I done? Am I just saying hey? Is that it? All right.
My name is Esther Collette, and I'm the Youth Ambassador for the Northwest Liberty Academy. It is my pleasure to introduce our next presenter. Josh Sanders is a program associate at FEE. There he assists the program teams in a number of ways, from outreach to implementation of student programs. He's also currently a senior Ashbrook Scholar, student senator, and a rugby captain at Ashland University, where he is pursuing a bachelor's degree in political science and economics. In his spare time, Josh returns to Michigan to tend his Black Walnut plantation in Jensenville. His passions include the American founding, entrepreneurship theory, and reading copious amounts of Abraham Lincoln writings. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Josh Sanders.
How are you all doing today?
Great.
Good. Good to hear. I'm doing great as well. I came from Eastern time zone, so it feels like I got to sleep in this morning. Always a plus. So yeah, as mentioned, we are FEE. That stands for the Foundation for Economic Education. We have a breakdown of the schedule up on the screen. You can see it kind of small, but it's going to go kind of in two parts. The first is incentives. We're going to have a discussion with Jeff Proctor, and then we're going to have an activity. And then after lunch, we're going to talk about institutions. And I would like a round of applause, first of all, for Elizabeth Hodge for helping so much putting this program together. And I'd also like to thank the Ralph Smeen Memorial Foundation for making programs like these education. We were founded over 70 years ago by Leonard Reed, who wrote iPencil, which you'll get a copy of later. We have bags for you with a number of books in them. And we're actually the first free market organization in the United States. He believes that free enterprise, entrepreneurship, and strong character are the keys to a flourishing society. And so this program, it's perfect because we have like a perfect amount of people. We really want to promote a discussion style program today. So to start out, if we could, just talk about what you guys think about free enterprise. If you could name in one or two words, what are the biggest, what are the most key elements to free enterprise? What would they be? Any brave souls? Good. Sure.
I like what it says up there.
Yes, what it says up there.
The strong character, like strong character is one of the most important elements of a free enterprise system, because without honesty and agreement that you know that somebody's going to obey their contract or steal your property, then you really have a free enterprise.
Absolutely. Other hands? I think I saw one back there. Yeah.
No government intrusion.
Any other ideas? Sure, Matt.
Freedom of thought, the freedom to think your own ideas and implement them.
Very good. Yeah, I love what you guys do here, combining both liberty and economics. The program I'm from does a similar thing, so I was very excited to read about you and talk with you. Also, lovers of the Declaration. So yeah, that's a little bit about FEE and our history. You can learn more at FEE.org or talk to Jane and I anytime today. We also hold one-day seminars like this that are public events everyone's welcome to. We also hold 3-day seminars all around the country that I see a few familiar, Callie, I see a few familiar faces from St. Louis. Yep, I see a few familiar faces from St. Louis this summer. So if you want to know their experience, they can give us an honest review. But please do apply for those. Registration opens in a few months, and they're a lot of fun. So it's like this, but 3 days. Plus you get to spend the night. We have a lot of activities we do. And lastly, check us out online. We're at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at FEE Online. So feel free to check us out. I know introduction talks aren't the most exciting, but what we do have exciting today is a really awesome speaker, Jeff Proctor. The awesome speaker is not me, don't worry, I'm almost done. But the thing is, Jeff plans to really stretch your minds today, and I want you guys to really interact with Jeff. I'm sure he wants you to stretch his mind as well. So I want to take a couple minutes and talk about this theme, economics in unusual places, incentives, institutions, and you. Kind of non-title. So yeah, let's have a little bit of a discussion about that to get warmed up to those things. So I like to ask a lot of questions. I like to do a lot of hand raising. So raise your hand in the room if you would like to be a millionaire one day. Any takers? Not a trick question. All right, what about entrepreneurs? You are or want to be an entrepreneur one day. Okay. What about, say, a statesman? It's not a word you hear in politics anymore. Okay. A few of those. And what about even you want to be generally successful in life? Raise your hand. I hope this is everyone. I really do. Okay. Me too. And I've got good and bad news. The bad news is that I can't help you become a millionaire. I'm a poor college student. You know this. The good news is that I'm going to try to offer an observation and that may help with this and may get the gears turning for this program. And that is the millionaire, the entrepreneur, the statesman, generally successful people are not blind. Okay, it's a weird thing to say. You guys are probably like, everyone knows that only 0.3% of people in the U.S. are blind. Like, that makes no sense. Blind to incentives and impacts of institutions. Okay, so still very vague. So let's say more about that. We're going to get a little bit philosophical here for just a second. So whenever we view the world, there's this thing. It's called the dual nature. And which has to do with our perceptions. Okay? So our perceptions are not always the truth, right? So that's why different people think different things. For instance, the 6-month-old in the back that I met earlier, if she sees a dog, that is going to be a big fluffy monster with teeth in her face, right? It's not going to be her pet or someone who's going to protect her. Growing up with education and experience, we come to learn that that's actually a really friendly puppy that wants to play. Okay, so that's a really important step to take to think about how the reality of things, because what we see at first isn't always the truth, and economists are obsessed with this. So Bastiat wrote an essay, "The Seen and the Unseen." He wants us to move past our initial perceptions of things so that we can see what's hidden beyond. Or economics in one lesson. It looks at the same sort of thing. You have a copy of that in your bags as well. Anna Jane pointed me to a podcast, she loves podcasts, called 99% Invisible. And it really sums up this idea as well. So it's all about design. They talk about incentives as well. But the idea is that with most of the things that we look at in the world, we're only seeing 1% of what goes into it. Right? That the 99% left are things, incentives, and other things that we don't see in how they were designed. Okay? So enough philosophizing. But to go on that point, it's this sort of thing where you've all heard of if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound, right? So what do you guys think? All right, yes, it does make a sound. No's, it doesn't make a sound. Okay, mostly yeses, and that's good, and that's the way we have to think of it. But also, it's a little bit of a false dichotomy, right? So we should go out to the woods and see if a tree has fallen in the first place, right? Before we say yes or no, whether a tree has fallen. So the first step in recognizing that there are hidden incentives out there and institutions that impact us is realizing that there's often 99% of whatever we look at that's hidden. Okay, so let's see, time here. I'll throw out a quick example or two. Let me ask, how many of you or your families have lawns or yards? Okay, call them yards in the Midwest. I don't know what you guys call them out here. And keep your hands raised if you mow that lawn, or someone in your family mows that lawn. You know, keep them raised if you mow that regularly, every week or two, depending on rain. Keep your hand raised if you ever water or fertilize that. Okay. Keep your hand raised if you have a lawnmower to mow that lawn. Okay. Now, can anyone answer me why? Sure. Okay. That's definitely one reason. So, taking a step back, trying to look at yards objectively, it sounds really crazy to me. What you guys just told me was, especially if you planted your own yard, that you went out and you bought seeds and other equipment to plant your yard. Roller, the things with spikes. I always called it a porcupine as a kid. I'm not sure what it's actually called. You plant this area around your house with billions of these little plants. Okay, and then the craziness isn't over yet. Then you spend thousands of dollars on a lawnmower and fertilizer and water. Americans are obsessed with watering their yards. We actually use twice the amount of water on our yards as we do irrigating our agricultural fields. It's kind of crazy, right? And does your yard make you money? Anyone? Does your yard make you money? No. Okay. So it's not a business idea, right? You guys made a good point. It looks nice. Okay. That's right. We definitely noticed yards are everywhere. All the yards combined in the U.S. are about the size of Iowa. nice, but what about the people? I have some neighbors like this. They really don't care to look at a nice yard. It doesn't matter to them. And yet I see them out there every Saturday afternoon cutting the grass at 3 1/4. So why else might that be?
Peer pressure.
Yeah.
Trying to fit in with everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. So this will get you into thinking about institutions a little bit. But Jeff is going to talk about that later. And institutions aren't always what you might think they are. Okay, one of the most powerful institutions, I think, is the family and other social groups like neighborhoods, right? So the reason my neighbors, even though they don't care about how their yard looks, the reason that they keep their grass cut is because the neighbors would complain or touch them. And I think respect is a pretty powerful incentive to do things. So there's a lot of examples like this. Jeff is going to tell you a lot of stories today. And I hope this has kind of started to turn the gears in your mind. And I hope the next time you're sitting on your lawnmower, you ask yourself why you're cutting your grass and why you have a yard, right? It's the most normal thing. Most of us, if not all of us, grew up in America and we saw yards everywhere. And yet, if you take a step back, it looks like we're all crazy, right? So with that, I'm going to wrap up. And Jace, I believe, is going to come up and introduce our speaker. Please push him around intellectually, not physically. Please push him around. He's great. Ask him a lot of questions. Don't let him skate by. So please welcome Jace up to introduce Jeff.
Good morning. My name is Jace Wright. I'm a youth ambassador for the Northwest Liberty Academy. It is my honor to introduce the next presenter. Jeff Proctor is an applied economist focused on using economic principles to foster better organizational design, management, and innovation. He works as a consultant and facilitator with the Charles Koch Institute, and through that role, contributes to strengthening America's community by working with Stand Together and its venture partners. Jeff earned a master's degree in economics from George Mason University and bachelor's degrees in psychology and communications from Harvard University. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Jeff Proctor.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
I assume when you said push him around, you meant Jace, right? Not me. All right. No. In all seriousness, no kid gloves today. We're going to dive into some concepts, and if you disagree, if you have concerns, if you're worried about the direction that the conversation is going, I really, really do hope you say something. I'm going to ask you guys to do a little bit of group work today. We'll break out in different corners of the room and try to come up with some challenging questions to really push this material. So, title of today's first session is pretty simple: Incentives Matter. We often joke in economic circles that if we had 2 words to describe economics to people, if they only gave us 2 words, we would say incentives matter. Fortunately, they usually give us a lot more than that, and we don't shut up. So the underlying idea for this session is that incentives matter. I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff in my bio and some of the ways that I get to use these ideas, and a little bit about just what economics is before we get started. So as Jace mentioned, I work with this really cool new organization in DC called Stand Together, and they invest in community nonprofits who are working on things like alleviating poverty and helping to solve educational failure and things like that in communities across the country. I do basically management consulting for them, which is I get to go around and ask a bunch of really annoying questions to the leaders of the organizations, and when they finally answer those questions, we work on making things better inside their organization to help them be more successful. When I say really annoying questions, mostly what I mean is economics questions. My job is incredibly simple. I kind of can't believe I get paid to do it. I go around and I ask people questions like the ones that we're going to talk about today, about the decisions that they're making, about the incentives that they are either creating for other people or the incentives that they are falling into, and try to make things better so that their organization can grow. I say that to say that it's not a super common job, but that it is actually possible to learn some really basic economic principles and then go have a job doing that, which is kind of a dream come true for me. And if if anybody wants to talk about how they might be on a path to do that in the future during any of the breaks or anything like that, I would love to do that. When I was here 2 years ago, this is my second visit to Boise. Also, by the way, they have a parade every time I come. I don't know if that's me or if you guys just always have parades, but either way, it's the same. We have font issues. My bad. Jason Riddle, who works for Fee, was here with me. We were kind of co-teaching the seminar last time. And he said something that has stuck with me and I have stolen from him pretty relentlessly, is that economic thinking is a superpower. If we learn basic economic principles and we apply them everywhere we can, we think very differently about the world. And as Josh said, I think it's really important, we think in a more reality-based way about the world. And the whole point of trying to apply economic thinking is to tie our choices to reality. So for those of you who've got a little bit of exposure to economics so far, why do you think I believe that economic thinking ties your choices to reality? What is it about economics? What is economics that allows that to happen? Jason?
Thinking about the opportunity costs of a decision and it makes it rational.
So one economic principle that's actually not going to be on our slide deck today, but really important, is opportunity cost, right? So the opportunity cost of an action is the next valuable action you didn't take part in because you chose this. So by being here today, I gave up probably sleeping in or watching soccer. That's probably what I would be doing today if I wasn't here. So my opportunity cost of being here is the value that I would have received from watching soccer or sleeping in, right? I will tell you, when I say I get to go out and ask a lot of business people questions, that opportunity cost question is the number one question that I get results from. Asking a leader of an organization, what aren't you doing because of everything you are doing? And they'll make a list of the things they're not doing, and I'll say, are any of those things you're not doing more important than any of the things you are doing? The answer is always yes. So then we get them to stop doing some of the stuff they are doing, right? Easy stuff, right? You're already there, right? So, but it turns out that in every single business, I think in this country, you can find big important lists of things that they aren't doing that they ought to be doing, and things they should stop doing. So that's a great example. What else do you think, even more basic, just definitionally of economics, why do you think economics might tie us to reality? Tie our thinking to a more reality-based approach? Any ideas? Yeah.
I think it reveals human nature.
Okay.
The way people act based on the incentives that they have.
Yeah, so the very simple definition that I use of economics, or economic thinking, is the study of human action. Right? So for those of you who've gotten into some economic philosophy a little bit, you've probably encountered that idea before. Economics is the study of human action. Why people decide things, how people make decisions. Right? So if I'm a student, regardless of whether I'm an economist or not, if I'm a student of human action, I understand why people make choices, why people do things. I'm more likely to be able to make better decisions in my day-to-day. I'm more likely to make better decisions with my education, school, with my job. And we're going to talk about incentives and economics in all of those different environments. But this idea that economic thinking is a superpower obviously makes me feel better because it's what I do. But when I heard Jason say that a couple years ago here, I thought there really is something to that, because most people aren't trained to apply economic thinking to what they do. Even people who have studied economics, even at the college level, quite frankly, even a lot of people who have economics degrees. A lot of economics degrees are basically like weird math degrees now, where you learn how to do charts and graphs, which is cool and has a lot of value. But you can talk to someone who has a degree in economics, and you can ask them that opportunity cost question that you asked, and they're like, oh, I haven't really thought of that. So economists these days are trained to be sort of weird mathematicians more than they are to be critical thinkers about the world that they live in. Right? Yeah.
So are you saying then that if we don't have the economic thinking superpower, that we sometimes do things without really understanding why we're doing those things? Or if we did understand, we could do better things?
I definitely think the second part. We'll talk about this a little bit. I think that all human action is rational when you define rational the right way. Right? So rational behavior to an economist is simply behavior that is a purposeful attempt by a person to achieve a goal that they have for themselves. Right? So if I see you doing something that we're going to talk about this a ton today, but if I see you doing something I think is weird, I could say, well, he's irrational. Right? In my mind, that's an arrogant answer. Like, Like, I'm assuming I know your rationality that we just met, right? I think a better answer is to say, there's probably something going on in his mind or in his world that makes that behavior seem rational for him, that if I knew those things, it might seem rational to me too. Right? So I do think there's a humility in economic thinking that's really important. Getting to kind of some of the character stuff, right? Thinking about how do we look at other people, and do we give them the benefit of the doubt that we hope that they give us, right? And I think economics can help us do that. But the second part is exactly right. I can improve the success of my behavior and my choices the more I understand these principles. The second bit is looking at other people's behavior and making more sense about it. I would say I used to be really confused about other people's actions until I studied economics. Now it's like, okay, I might not agree. I might not like the choices they make. I might have a philosophical difference with their views, but at least I'm not sitting here just wondering completely why they would ever do anything crazy like that. I think that's kind of what the superpower is a little bit. Calms my anxiety significantly about the human condition. So I want to start with the first principle. This is where economics always begins. I'm only using slides today for definitions and long chunks of text that I want you guys to have multiple ways of taking in. So I'll say them, but I also will read them. Most of what we're going to do today is not on the slides, just so you know. The first principle is scarcity is the fundamental economic problem of having seemingly unlimited human wants in a world of limited resources. It states that society has insufficient productive resources to fulfill all human wants and needs. This is where economics begins. If there was no scarcity, we wouldn't need economics. If you could have everything you want all the time, and simultaneously I could have everything I want all the time, and you all could do that, we wouldn't need economics, because there would be no meaningful choice. I can have my cake and eat it too, and so can you, and it's just always cake and it's great. Right? But we know that's not the world that we live in, cake or otherwise. Right? Where do you guys mostly hear the idea of scarcity when you talk about economics? Where does it come up, maybe even just like in the news or in conversation?
A lot about natural resources, especially once we can clarify who owns what.
Yeah.
Air, water.
Mm-hmm. Where else? Do you more hear about rich people suffering from scarcity or poor people suffering from scarcity? Right? Or rich countries versus poorer countries. We talk about scarcity in Africa. We don't talk about scarcity much in rich parts of the United States. But if you look at this definition, right, this is saying scarcity is everywhere. The guy who has 6 Ferraris might want 7. Right? He is experiencing scarcity. Now it's almost silly to say, and not super helpful in terms of maybe making the world a better place as much, but it certainly matters. Right? It matters that he experiences scarcity, because that's going to affect some of the things we talk about later. So the biggest thing I want us to walk away with when we're building this case for why incentives matter is that scarcity is everywhere. We all experience it basically all the time. Any challenges to that? Anybody want to push that concept around? Yeah.
As long as it's not entitled. Because the scarcity, I don't feel like things are scarce to me if I'm willing to put the effort to go get them. If I'm not willing to put the effort to go get them and I'm entitled to them, then that's false scarcity. To me.
No, that's absolutely right. I think that's operating on a slightly different plane than the economic plane, right? But I totally agree. Nothing about this says that anybody is entitled to a thing. There's really no, because you're getting more into psychology, which my original background was in psychology. I love this stuff, this idea of entitlement. But this is just saying, regardless of why I want a thing, or all the things that I want, there's not enough things to satisfy all of my wants or needs. It doesn't even say whether my wants and needs are good for me. Right? I can want some really bad things for myself, destructive things. I have a scarcity of those too. Right? The question of whether those are good for me or not is psychology, health, in some cases theology, philosophy, right? Those are fields that try to answer the question of whether my wants are good for me or not. All economics is trying to say, it's a very simple claim, is that there's not enough stuff to satisfy those needs and wants that I have. I would actually say we need other fields other than economics to have a more well-rounded picture of life. Right? Economics doesn't answer everything. And whether my wants or needs are actually good for me is something that would fall outside of economics. So I agree. It just doesn't change the economic definition. Yeah.
So basically, you're saying anyone can have scarcity.
I would say everyone does experience scarcity. Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much you make or how little.
Yep. Now, there's an interesting problem that is implied just by scarcity. If there's not enough stuff to satisfy all the human wants and needs, and we're all self-interested, which is another fundamental idea of economics, not selfish, but self-interested. What's the implication of scarcity for our behavior? What are we trying to do when it comes to resources that might fill our wants and needs? We're trying to get them. If we're all trying to get resources to fill our wants and needs, and there's not enough to go around, what do? Yeah?
We prioritize who needs it more.
Okay. And we need a system of doing that. So here's something that I think is really interesting, and this is a weird way to say this. You won't hear a lot of people say this, but basically, resources are rationed, whether we like it or not. Now, one way to ration resources is to give the government a bunch of power and let the government decide what everybody gets. There have been some experiments in that idea in human history that haven't gone great. Right? Another way is to allow us to prioritize through the market, right? Use our resources to decide what we want and don't want and make trade-offs, right? And then there's like variations in between, right? The government decides some stuff, we decide a lot of stuff. The government decides a lot of stuff, we decide a little bit of stuff. But that's kind of the range of things, right? On one hand, you have purely voluntary exchange, and on the other hand, you have purely involuntary exchange. And a lot of, certainly recent human history, the last few hundred years, has been trying to figure out which one of those extremes or where on that spectrum works best. I'm guessing that there's a strong concentration of people in this room who would see toward the end of voluntary, right? Given that you're here, and I would agree with you. So that's a big challenge that's implied just by the fact that scarcity happens. The second big concept I want to introduce here is the subjective theory of value. The subjective theory of value advances the idea that the value of a good is not determined by any inherent property of the good, nor by the amount of labor necessary to produce the good, but instead value is determined by the importance an acting individual places on a good for the achievement of his desired ends. There's a ton in here I want to unpack with you real quick. I want to start with a really simple example. This clicker. How much would you pay right now to buy this clicker from me? Who would pay $50 to buy this clicker? 40? 30?
What does it turn off and on?
Just for now, just the slides. 20? 10? Got a $10 offer back? Okay. So $10 is what nerdy economists would call a market clearing price in this room for this clicker. I can tell you, in giving presentations almost every day for the last 10 years, if I didn't have one of these, I would easily pay $100 for it. Easily. Right? I value this clicker very differently than anybody in the room. The only chance I had of selling it for like 40 or 50 is if there's somebody else in the room who does a bunch of presentations. Right? And they would buy it for me. The value of this clicker comes from the fact that I enjoy not having to either stand by the computer the whole time or worse, yell next slide every time I want the slides changed, which I think those two words should be banished from the English language. Right? The value of this clicker does not come from the cost of the ingredients that went to make it, right? Or even worse, some inherent goodness of clickers. Right? The only reason that this clicker is valuable is because it does something for me that I'm willing to make trade-offs in order to get. Cool on that? All right, so let's talk about some of the easy cases of subjective value. Where does everybody, what are some things that everybody recognizes are valued subjectively? Easy stuff. Yep.
Heirloom items.
Heirloom items, yeah, if it's important to your family, it's probably not, like, I probably don't value it. And you're like, this is the pot roast dish that my great-great-grandmother made pot roast in, and I'm like, well, can I get some pot roast? Like, but to you guys, it's like if nobody touched the dish, right? Absolutely. What else? Yeah.
How you value your time.
How you value your time, right? So when I said earlier I might sleep in this morning, some of you are like, oh, that would be great. That's awesome. Some of you are like, I would never sleep in. I've got work to do, right? We value our time differently.
say that because I've met people who had like their computer crashed. You take it to a computer expert. The computer expert says, "Hey, I can recover these. It's going to be $800," and you're kind of stuck trying to figure out what is the value of these 2,000 photographs.
Yeah, that actually gets to my favorite easy example. We're going to use hard examples in a second. My favorite easy example is art in general, right? I like really, really, really modern art. A couple years ago, a painting sold for $44 million at an art auction. It was a big blue rectangle with a white line down the middle. It looked like a ping pong table. When I found out about this, my reply was, "What a bargain." Anybody like art like that here? Okay.
That'd be irrational.
We finally got to the point. No, it's not irrational because I am the person who determines what I value. Value only comes from the fact that people in their head have an affinity, an affection for things, and we value things differently, right? I've been very fortunate to do a ton of travel in my life, and I've walked through some of the world's most famous museums, seen some of the most famous artwork, and I'm usually bored by it, right? It doesn't make me feel anything. But bright colors, clean lines, the Tate Modern Museum in London, mostly just big gray and orange squares on the wall. I think it's amazing, right? We value things subjectively. What are some harder things? What are some things that maybe we don't want to say that we value subjectively? We should still say it because participation is really important. Yeah.
I mean, health. Like, do I want to pay for something for my own health or for my wife's and my kids?
Yeah. We make different choices around health. We make choices sometimes that other people would look at and say, "That's insane. Why would you do that?" Right? So one explanation is, well, we value being healthy differently from each other. Right? We'll talk about some of the implications of that one actually here in a little bit. But what else? Yeah.
Houses and cars.
Yes, stuff. So by virtue of being a modern art lover, I'm also a minimalist. I own basically very little stuff. I don't like stuff. I don't like to accumulate stuff. And I have friends who are very same life stage as me, same age, who've been out in the world, and they have houses full of stuff. And it just blows my mind, right? So yeah, we value possessions in general differently. This other hand, oh, you held your phone up?
I have my phone.
Yeah, I don't see. This is one I don't know. I don't see how everyone doesn't value their phone. When you said you do the unplugged day, I leaned over to Anna Jane and I said, "Am I allowed to have a panic attack the whole time?" But I assume that's probably the point, right? Is to help me appreciate things that are not digital a little bit. I'm old enough to where when I grew up, this will blow young people's mind. But when I grew up, it still wasn't cool to be into technology, but I really was. So like I got made fun of for having a computer and like being on it all the time and wanting technology when it came out. And now if you're not lined for the iPhone, people think that you're some kind of loser. It outrages me. If I'd been born like 10 years later, I would be cool. That's what I tell myself and my therapist. Anybody want to challenge this idea of subjective value? Yeah.
Commodities, like copper. It's whatever the market.
So we're not saying that pricing is subjective. You're absolutely right. Commodity goods, copper is copper is copper, wheat is wheat is wheat, steel is steel is steel. There's a commodity price. It's on market. But what we're saying though is, I would value the possession or use of those things differently, right? So let's use wheat. Wheat is a commodity, right? So flour, all things that originate from wheat. I try, although we failed miserably last night, to follow a diet where I don't eat flour. So even though the market price of grain is probably $6 a bushel or something like that, I don't know anybody. My mom sells grain for a living. She'd hate me for not knowing this. But yeah, I don't value it nearly that high, so I just don't purchase it. Right? But you're right. The market price, very set, very almost universal. Right? But we're not talking about price. We're talking about value. Important difference. I value grain very, very low. I value large quantities of beef very, very high. Like I would pay more than most of you would for a large steak. Yeah. No, go ahead.
How do you deal with things that are essential to life that you think that people want desert, meaning water? They will claim, I'll pay whatever they both value it kind of as the extreme. Now, ability to pay is a separate issue. But
You're stealing my thunder a little bit, but I'll let you. No, this is great. This is actually a long-standing concept in economics. So I have a bottle of water. How many of you, if I were offering you this bottle full of water versus a bottle full of diamonds right now in this room, how many of you would take the water? Okay. Why?
Because I'm thirsty.
Because you're thirsty? How many waters do you think you can get for a bottle full of diamonds if I gave it? Right? In this room, now sometimes I'll say like, diamonds are sometimes unethically sourced, so we're going to say they're ethically sourced diamonds. Nobody had to die to get these diamonds. Right? Pure, good, ethical diamonds. Nobody in this room probably is going to take the water. Now you're in the desert. You have 10 seconds to live. The only thing saving your life is a bottle of water. No one takes the diamonds. Right? So this is literally called the diamond water paradox in economics. It is the way that we actually articulate subjective value. Right? Subjective value still holds even at the extreme. Now I want to be careful because I see some potentially frustrated looks. This is not an ethical claim on how much you should charge for water if you're selling water to dying people in the desert. Right? Like the economics doesn't touch that. What economics does say is, we get a little bit advanced here, the things like price controls or anti-price gouging laws actually harm people. Right? So if we had a massive natural disaster right here in this room, and we say, you can only charge $2 per bottle of water. So I've got 4 bottles up here. There's some water in the back. How quickly do you think we go through water? Pretty fast, right? There's no other water. What do we hope happens to save our lives once all of our water is gone? We hope people give us some water, right? Some people will give us water. Some people will, out of the goodness of their hearts, they'll give us water. And we'll drink that water. What happens when that water's gone? What do we hope happens? We hope someone will sell us water. What will help us be more likely to have water sold to us if the price is able to rise? Because $2 bottle of water, maybe it'll come from the next town over, right? But no one's going to ship water for sale from Washington or California, right? To get that water to be shipped, the price has to be allowed to rise, right? So this is actually a pretty advanced incentives matter story, but this is why you see a lot of cases where in natural disasters, people are less well off than they have to be, because laws, out of the goodness of people's hearts, tends to make them do these sort of perverse things to destroy others. All right, so 2 lessons here that we're going to apply in some group work really quickly. Because of scarcity, we have to make choices or trade-offs. Famous economist Thomas Sowell, many of you probably read, said there are no solutions, only trade-offs. Because every time we use a resource to solve something, we're taking the resource away from something that could have solved something else. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. We have to make choices. When we make choices, we can make some good things happen. That's always going to come at the expense of something. That's Jason's opportunity cost term from earlier. And because of subjective value, among other things, there are other things that subjective value that matter, we make different choices than other people, or even ourselves at other times. I like to ask the question, how many of you prefer apples over oranges? Who prefers apples here? Okay, among you guys, have you ever chosen an orange over an apple? Unless you're allergic or something, you probably at some point in your life have looked at a fruit bowl and said, yeah, today's going to be an orange day. Right? So we make choices differently even from ourselves at different times. This isn't rocket science. This is actually stuff you already knew, but we're just kind of pointing it out. So I want to talk a little bit about how these incentives work in practice and then let you guys do some work yourself. First of all, in everyday life, where have you seen, maybe even today, some incentives just operating on the way that you live your life? One question I was going to ask, but I'm not, is the set of incentives about why you're here. Because there are different ones. Some of you are here because you're curious about developing an economic way of thinking just to make your life better in some way. Some of you are here because the older people who live in your house and make the rules told you to be here. Right? Is that as diplomatic as possible? Right? And there are probably a lot of other reasons that you're here. Right? We're all literally doing the same thing, right? We all came to this room to talk about economics, but the number of incentives, if you think about it in a really complicated way, the number of incentives that acted on you are probably different for each and every person. Some of you are like, yeah, I'd go anyway, but they're also telling me I have to go, and I don't want to disappoint her and get in a fight. And some of you are here for entirely different reasons than that, right? All right, in a business, where anybody can think of business incentives that might be in place. I've got a couple of stories, but I want to see what you guys think of. Where do incentives matter in business? Kind of a big, obvious one. Yeah.
Well, like when my dad is deciding whether or not he wants to go to like a clinic somewhere or something like that. Just,
Yeah.
all the time.
I use doctors and medical as an incentive. Do you think most doctors care about helping patients be healthy? Yeah, I do too. Yeah, that seems right. Do you think that every doctor would still be a doctor if we cut doctor salaries by 75%? But they care about people, you guys. Incentives matter, right? Now, some doctors would be doctors for free. Some doctors volunteer their time to nonprofits, and they are doctors for free. But if we want more doctors, we need to allow profit signals, in economic term, to drive more doctors into the market. That's not to take away from the fact that they care about people and they want help. That's an incentive too, right? But another incentive for business people in general is to seek profit, to seek well-being through the accumulation of resources for them and their families. Yeah.
I'd say quality of life. Business isn't. Sometimes we confuse standard of living with quality of life.
Okay.
So business may be pursuing something so you improve your quality of life. It may be tied to financial side of it, but it may be tied to other parts.
Yeah. No, I think both of those terms work really well. I think the standard of living or quality of life are things that we identify for ourselves. What you call quality of life and what I call quality of life are probably at least somewhat different.
Yeah, your art would be different than mine.
Yeah. For sure. All right, this one I'm going to tell actually an interesting story, and this is from my work. One of my clients is a group called Axe Housing. They work in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Milwaukee was the country really suffered from the housing crisis 8 or 9 years ago, but Milwaukee was devastated by this. There are tons of abandoned and foreclosed homes in Milwaukee. You can buy a 5-bedroom home in certain neighborhoods in Milwaukee for $3,500 total. $3,500. Yeah. And yet they don't sell because these neighborhoods have just been decimated, right? So Axe came up with this idea that they want to, this was actually 25 years ago, they want to help families with a lot of barriers to home ownership own and live in homes that have a lot of barriers to being purchased, right? So if you have credit issues, you have these things that might, you have financial issues, they help families become homeowner ready in order to purchase and live in some of these homes that would otherwise be abandoned. There's some really cool stories that come out of it. So I met a woman who was able to buy a duplex, live in that duplex, live in half the duplex with her children, and rent the other half out, and her monthly housing expenses are zero. So she went from being a renter who could barely afford to live to a homeowner and a landlord through working with this program. Really cool stuff. So this organization has a real estate brokerage inside their organization. And this group, real estate people, were crushing their numbers. Right? They were selling so many houses, making so much money. They actually bringing revenue in for the organization. But yet, the organization was failing to meet its goals in terms of helping the families that they were trying to help. There were families who needed help that were still not getting help, even though this team was exceeding their goals. What do you think? Apply your incentive lens. What do you think might have been going on? What was happening inside that organization that led one team to be having record years, record sales, but the overall organization was failing to meet even its basic goals? Yeah.
What if they were directing resources for profit?
I don't actually know the answer to that. I actually suspect that was happening.
Didn't hear it.
He said they may have been directing more resources to the profit side of it, so putting resources into making money. Yes, I'm almost certain they were doing that. Why were they doing that? What was the root cause of that happening? Priorities. Where might their priorities have been misaligned?
Maybe focusing on their personal goals corporate goals?
Yeah, that's actually a whole thing, by the way. It's called the principal agent problem in economics. Your boss, your owner of your company, wants you to apply his or her risk profile to your decisions in the business, but you tend to provide your own. So if I'm really risky, but your boss is not, the owner's not, or vice versa, you get some of these weird decisions. It's a whole other thing. But yeah.
Well, you said that in the organization there was this real estate brokerage. That's what they do. That's their incentive is to sell homes or buy homes, right? So it sounds like they are disconnected from the other end of the organization.
So real estate brokers are pretty straightforward compensation-wise. They make a percentage of the sale. So if I'm trying to make as much money for me as I can, and I'm a real estate salesperson, who am I trying to sell houses to? People who,
People with high income.
I want the easiest sales I can clear because I want to pad my numbers. If I'm the head of the organization, I told you a little bit about why they exist. Who do I want us to sell houses to? The families with the most need, right? So what do we have to do to fix that? We have to change the way the real estate people are compensated, and that's what we're working on with it now. So we're working on a program that says if you sell a home to a family that most fits the profile of the families we're trying, you get a multiplier bonus on your commission, right? So now what's happening? We're seeing fewer sales out in the suburbs that aren't related to the mission of the organization at all, and you're seeing more and more work on these sales that are actually material to the organization. Now these are smart people who've been doing this for a long time, but organizations make these incentive mistakes all the time. And for those of you, the adults in the room, or even those who have like summer or after school jobs, apply this lens at work. You'll see weird stuff. Right? You will see absolutely weird stuff when you say, where are incentives aligned for me to do things that are probably not in the best interest of my company? And then if you have a boss who's cool with it, go tell your boss and start working on it. Just as a personal note, I started doing this kind of consulting work with businesses because I worked in a company. We had all these things going on, and the leaders of the company would not make the economic adjustments necessary. And I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to go do this. So now we're here. In the government, there's a lot of these. We're going to talk a lot about government in the second session. But I want to tell a story really quickly. In 1974, the federal government passed a law called the Endangered Species Act. Anybody ever heard this story before? A couple people here, and those who have heard it are cringing a little bit. You'll all be cringing in a second. Easiest question today: what do you think the Endangered Species Act was designed to do? Yeah.
Spend money to save species.
Yeah. Spend money to save animals, right? It is a pro-animals being alive idea, right? Now I'll go even further, right? The Department of Fish and Wildlife. If you graduate college and you go work for the Department of Fish and Wildlife, do you think that you like animals or hate animals? This is the easiest part of the day, right? Of course, you make a career out of that. So I'm not one of those people who gets up and talks about the big bad government who's just trying to make everybody's life miserable and trying to break everything. I actually think if you go get that job, you probably have really great intentions. But economics is going to tell you that intentions don't matter a whole lot, right? So what actually happened in this story is they passed a law that said if an endangered animal is found on your property, you have to report that, and you lose temporary ownership over your property until that animal can either be safely moved or repopulated, right? Now, in places like Washington, D.C. or New York, that's not so big of a deal, right? It's like, oh, I've seen this. I've actually seen people in my neighborhood in D.C., they'll find a bird that's like, probably not in danger, but there's not a ton of them. And they'll create a little bird sanctuary and get the bird going. But most of the country, land is a major piece of capital that helps people make money, right? Farmland, timber, all sorts of things, right? I know I'm preaching to the choir. So when you lose your land in that aspect, you might be losing a large part of your livelihood. So what do you think a lot of people did when they went out and they found the rare endangered kookaburra in their tree, in their woods?
They took care of it themselves.
Oh, wow, that's the nicest way I've ever heard that said. They took care of it themselves. The problem has been solved. How do you think they solved it? They solved it by reporting it to the Department of Fish and Wildlife?
No.
No. The phrase that actually came out from here was shoot, shovel, and shut up. Now again, these people go, they get these jobs in DC to try to save animals. None of us doubted, none of you were willing to doubt that they did that. But yet animals are dying. Right? So this is an incentives matter issue. They didn't mean to create the incentives to make this happen, but they very much did. And we're going to talk in the next session about the fact that where incentives come from, places like government, but obviously not only government, and some of the challenges. So yeah.
So what's a question they should have asked when they were designing this program? What would be that golden question where they would have said, hold on a minute, this is going to be a disaster?
You guys are really just got having this good. The question that economists get really good at asking is, and then what? We're going to make it illegal to have we're going to make it illegal to have an endangered animal on your property without giving up your property. Okay, and then what? And then people are going to call us and give up their property willingly? No, right? That's no. By the way, some people surely did it, right? We subjectively value things differently. We face different incentives, right? If it's going to cost you $100 to save the bird, you might save the bird. If it's going to cost you $100,000, most people are not going to save the bird, right? So, and then what? Or go back to being 5 years old and just ask why all the time. I always tell people that I lose friends a lot at parties because, like, this is me. Like, this is how I live all the time, right? So someone will say, "Hey, we should do this cool thing," and okay, and then what? Why? And if nobody likes that guy.
So they made a law on that you have to give up your property and land. So it's either the animal's life or if it's your way of life. You're in agriculture, you're growing corn, and that's the way you improve your income and whatnot. Then why should it affect you? You know?
Yeah.
Instead of just handling yourself.
Yeah, and you make all sorts of arguments. Well, you should do the right thing. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe, right? Like, in some cases, it's really clear what the right thing is. In other cases, it's not. Some of them supply different lenses to determine what the right thing is. And all the while, the animals are dying. Like, we all debate what the right thing to do is, right? Meanwhile, like, reality still marches forward, right? Stuff keeps happening. So again, this ties us to a more economic or a more reality-based view of things. So we're running a little bit short on time. I want to ask you guys really quickly to make like 3 groups on each side of the room. So just kind of huddle up with people next to you, and I'm going to give you one very simple challenge. I want you to find one place as a group where you think there might be some weird incentive stuff happening. It can be in any context, it can be in the world, it can be in government, but I want you to try to come up with the one thing you're going to walk away with and say, this is my weird incentive story that I discovered today. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do that. Like I said, I'm not a planning guy, so I'm not going to tell you what groups to be in. But huddle up and try to come up with a weird incentive story. I'll ask a couple of you guys to share them as we close.
That's what happens. What's everyone got?
It's a great incentive story.
I literally in clinic now. It's a disease.
Raise the sewage and go pay the electric.
Deal with sale. They are
So there's no sense of in that's happening to me when I'm going, hey, I have to, so you can check this and check that, or what building is something we bought 7.5 years ago. First thing the plumbing inspector came up was my food was supposed to be a whole house shut off, the water. You find out oh, it's over here. We don't have one. Where the hell goes the get payola on the side from the plumber? Yeah, but I think it's a path.
Right now, if you notice, it's hard to find anybody in construction that built it or no alleyway. For the building now is
Alright, let's bring it back up really quickly. I'm going to finish with this and let you guys share some of your ideas. The lesson is to look for incentives in everything. They explain behavior that might otherwise seem silly or irrational or weird. When other people are acting differently than we would or we think it's appropriate for the situation, they likely face different incentives or value things differently than we do. Now again, I want to go back to that's not an off the hook, right? Like that makes everything okay. Those are questions that we answer through a lot of different means. It just explains the behavior. That is all we're trying to do, looking at incentives. By the way, the nerdy economics term for this, if you're looking for something to Google and really dive into, it's called rational choice theory. What we've been talking about basically up until now is rational choice theory. There's some really good books, both like sort of economics textbooks and also more like popular econ books that you would buy at a bookstore on this. It's really as simple, in the beginning at least, as asking the incentives question about everything you see and building that lens to say, when I see behavior that doesn't make sense or that I want to try to understand, ask yourself, what are the incentives at play and where might people value things differently than I do in that scenario? So what interesting stuff did y'all come up with? Who wants to share a fun incentives example? Yeah.
So I go to the OAC public school system here, and the grading scale, which is 50% if you don't complete it or don't even turn something in, and no late penalties on anything.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. It's the school equivalent of the stuff I was talking about how we pay people, right? So in the management consulting work that I do, we spend a ton of time helping people design compensation systems because most compensation systems, many compensation systems create reverse incentives for people to actually underperform. The one that everyone knows about is government. Right? So the federal government, you can plot your course for your entire career about what your earnings are going to do. I'll be a GS9 and then I'll be a GS10. I worked there for 3 years and I'll be a GS11. These are all nerdy government paid grades. What's the incentive to just blow the top off your performance, right? So we help people mostly design incentives that say, if you double the amount of value you create for this business, we're going to double the amount we pay you. You know, we like the culture I work in, we don't have compensation caps. The only thing I know is the minimum amount of money I'm going to make this year. Right? I don't know what the maximum is because there's not one. And that creates a really cool set of incentives. We keep trying harder and keep doing more, and not to do stuff that's not valuable. Right? And it's a very similar thing with grading. Right? It changes the way you study. It changes the way you invest in learning. It changes the way that you behave in class. And all these different things are affected by that one little decision to grade on that scale. It's awesome. Where else? Behind Jason.
So when I was online school, you can turn it in 7 full days late, and it's still on time. You still get 100%. That doesn't help.
So let's get a little bit. Let's dig into that one a little bit. What does that really mean? it means that the deadline's not until 7 days after the, economists are weird about this. I would say, well, the deadline then, the printed deadline is meaningless, right? It's like a store where everything's always on sale. The shirt cost $180. I mean, I bought it for $30, and it was never actually $180, right? But it makes me feel better, right? My $30 shirt, right? That's the price. The price you write on the price tag is meaningless. The date you write on the deadline, meaningless, right? So what that means to an economist is the real deadline is 7 days from now, right? But if you're the teacher and you want the stuff today, that's a really bad incentive to create for your students to give them the 7 days. Yeah, Jason.
So it's my dad had an interesting situation a while ago. He was giving his therapist bonuses for getting more patients, or just basically based on the performance, and his patients seemed like just a little bit more anxious than normal, and it was kind of affecting their performance. They were actually doing worse, and he was wondering why, but he actually found the psychological reason was that they weren't mainly interested in just making money for themselves. Once they had their family taken care of, they wanted to be part of the team. They wanted to do everything they could for it. But it felt kind of like there's a lack of trust, and it was incentivizing them directly. So he actually had a meeting with them, and he actually kind of they would like for him to remove the incentives.
All right, you guys keep pushing me to go further, so I'm going to do it. I'll finish with this, and then we'll do the activity. Incentives are very much not just about money and dollars and cents. And in fact, there's a lot of research out there that suggests that dollars and cents incentives can cause much more harm than good in certain scenarios. I'll give you a funny example I shared with Alan last night. So we went to dinner last night. He came to pick me up at my hotel, got to the restaurant. We were talking about economics because it's the only thing I talk about. It's really it. And I said, well, what would happen right now if I pulled out a $20 bill and tried to pay you for this ride? What do you think would happen? Right? He'd say, first answer almost certainly would have been no. If I talked him into taking it, how do you think he would have felt? Would it be a good feeling or a bad feeling? Right? Yeah, he gave me a ride because he wanted to do a good thing for someone who was coming into town to talk to you guys. And I actually would have taken away his ability to do a good thing by compensating him for that, right? Now, the one that economists talk about is, this was before Uber, because now I haven't asked a friend for a ride to the airport in years, but before Uber, you would ask a friend for a ride to the airport. And if you tried to pay your friend, they'd be offended. Now, what's weird is you can sometimes pay your friend in pizza, and they really like that, but if you pay them the exact same amount of money, they don't like that, right? Remember subjective value, right? If I gave my friend $8.95, they're like, no, thank you. I give them a large pizza, it's totally cool, right? It's weird, right? But it's incentives and it's subjective value. So I don't doubt that at all, and that's where we have to be careful with this economic stuff, is helping design that program. I have no doubt that that program made them feel like they were sort of hired hands when they wanted to feel like part of the team. That happens a lot. All right, one more example from anybody. Anybody have any weird incentives they found? Yeah.
My friend is currently in manufacturing, and he told everyone that they could get all their work done by noon, be paying for a full day. And since that time, the production has gone up 29-30%. They work half a day, and they're done.
Yeah, what's the scary part of that story, though? How long have we been operating at, like, terrible inefficiency and not done, right? No, that's cool. That's so cool. I love that, right? Also, to anyone who wants to call my boss, I would take that deal. I will talk twice as fast and work less the amount. I'll give you his number. So. All right, so we're starting to build this ability to ask some questions that maybe we weren't asking before about where incentives come from, what incentives weigh on people's actions. We're going to add that in a session later and really dive into the source of incentives and why sometimes it matters where incentives come from. The economic nerd term for that is institution. Talk about that, but I'm going to let Josh and Anna Jane have you guys play a game for a little bit. So,
thank you. so tell your friends to look it up. It's on Northwest Liberty Academy's Facebook page. Also, if you don't have a name tag, we have more now. So stop by the table and Anna Jane will get you one. Also, if you haven't registered, she can help you register. I think we've got about 10 minutes for a break. Please be back in your seats in about.
Yeah, well, so everybody, I know that we have a lot of families here, and so you guys may have registered just under one person, and I want to make sure that we have everybody listed, just so we know, we like to, data-wise, we want to know how many people actually attended. So it would be awesome if you guys could make sure that each of you is individually registered, and you can just stop by and do that with me on paper really quick.
Thank you. 11:30.
We'll get some.
Just try to knock over the live stream camera. There's one person watching.
And it's me.
Yeah, I'll go check.
Literally.
Fine though, because
I'm in twin every month.
I have constant power now.
There you go.
figured out my extension for Chrome. Although this is in the best spot.
Oh yeah, that can be moved. Sorry.
Take that out there, put it by your jacket.
Put my jacket.
Yeah.
I took a test.
You could keep it down.
I'm just passing by.
So when we do the activity, I'm just going to actually take off here and because that one
Right.
now I'll just go walk out and I don't know if I'll check in. I haven't asked you how they oh, what is that?
So it was just starting this year, So you're the So what are you choosing, like a project based or using
rational choice theory applied to very strange situations like how we used to do like it's a very irreverent take on comics that I probably wanted to bring to a high school crowd. Yeah. Excuse me. My goal is to be able to but thank where I go to school, better program I'm in the same spot. I'm ready for you. Yeah. Thank you. Talk about it with you after I get a chance to read it.
I'm pretty available and work out.
I have to take off right now,
My little girl will start, she didn't start with us. Because I'm so involved, I understand
Are you still recording?
Mm-hmm. That does nothing for. I mean, I'm the only person who's.
Right, but it'll post after.
Well, I know.
Okay. Whatever. What do those other buttons do?
These ones.
Yeah.
This one I can add effects, which is going to take a minute for them to load. Then the other one was flash comments and comment or flash comments and switch camera.
Oh.
I got a pretty good setup going here.
Yeah.
And I'm actually still going down.
Great. Well, you'll get a better charge when you plug it directly into the wall.
During lunch. But this is like my slow down
I'm sorry.
Would it still stream if I turn the phone screen off?
I don't think so.
Yeah, hey, stop it. Not for you. Not for you.
You know, I can.
So, and then from the live stream to the video, there's about a 30-second delay.
I noticed that.
So, that's not too bad.
No, that's fine.
But that's not a problem doing the live comments.
Right.
Because the discussion might move on. We're going fishing. That's what it is.
That's what the game is, yeah.
Oh, hey, we had a first person. And then we left.
I have an idea.
I need to get here. Yay, didn't see me. So if people walk in and out, the lens is trying to focus and it keeps it moving. If I could not have all the surrounding stuff, I could get it to focus on the person's face. You can see them better.
I mean, you could move closer. Hey, Jimmy, you could move closer.
I could. The only thing is that I don't have the power. I could go directly from my computer. But the amp is charging so. We're going like with this setup 1%. So you dropped your cow. Yeah, it's being weird.
All right, everybody. It's not too loud. Welcome. I'm Anna Jane, as I mentioned earlier. I hope you enjoyed your talk with Jeff. We're going to kind of see how incentives play out in our next activity. So I bet you guys didn't know this, but this building actually has a pond in it. It's right next door. There's a ton of fish in there, and we're going to go fishing today. So for our next activity, as a group, it's going to have 2 sessions, and then in each session there's going to be 2 rounds each, right? So that makes sense. So we're going to do 1 session, and we're going to do a discussion. So we're going to come back in here. We're going to go to the pond. We're going to do this. We're going to do the rounds. Then we're going to come back here and have a discussion, and then we're going to do it again. So that's going to be the setup here. All right. So the goal is you are fishermen. So much like fishermen, you need fish not only to survive for yourself, for your family, you need to feed yourself, but you also need to make money. You need to make a profit off of it. So when you go fishing, your goals are, to survive, but also to make a profit and to be able to make some money off of this. So in this world, money is actually just candy, and we have a ton of different candy. So hopefully there's something in there for everybody. All right, so like I said, you need fish to survive. So you have to get at least one fish in this activity. When you go fishing, you have to get at least one fish. And then after that, pretty much everything that's profit, you're going to be able to trade each of those fish that you catch in for a piece of candy. The important thing to know is that during the first round, each fish is worth a piece of candy that is a very small piece of candy. So we have Hershey Kisses, we have Double Bubble, we have Tootsie Rolls, we have Hubba Bubba, small little piece of candy, right? But in the second round, so you're going to go fishing, and then we're going to go, everybody's going to get to go fishing, and then we're going to go again, and whatever fish are left, so if you have a bunch of young little fish in the pond, they're not really worth much. They don't have much meat on them. They're not gonna feed you well, and you're not gonna be able to sell them for very much. So you're gonna get these little candies. But if you wait and you let those fish get big, you're gonna get more, right? So in the second round, you're gonna get bigger pieces of candy. We got Reese's, we got Twix, we got Snickers, we got Airheads. So just keep that in mind as we're playing the game. That if you guys want candy, you'll definitely get candy either way. But if you want to wait, round 2 has some bigger candy. All right, let's not discuss. All right, so what we're going to do first, I know we've got a big group here, and so we're going to hopefully try to move all together to the room right next door. Before we get moving, so parents, you are more than welcome to participate, but obviously don't feel like you have to participate if you don't feel like moving. And everybody can leave their stuff right where it is. So if you guys want to head into the next room, we're going to circle around and nobody touch anything until I say go.
We already got refilled.
They're going to check.
14 and older.
Oh, you took that out? Still open?
I was just moving.
Oh, that's really great.
All right, is that everybody who wants to play? All right. Okay, guys, so I'm going to pull up my timer, and when I say go, you're going to try and catch as many fish as you can. I want to remind you that you can catch as many or as few as you want. You need one to survive. So you are going to be eliminated if you don't get at least one fish, and then you get candy after that. Yes. Do you have a question? Oh, do you have a question? Yeah, you just grab them, and then, so then at the end of the 30 seconds, again, this is a 30-second round, so at the end of the 30 seconds, you guys will get to go to the candy man, Josh. He's outside with the small candies, and he will be able to pay you guys out. So again, this is just round 1, right? So you guys are going to get Hershey Kisses, Double Bubble, Tootsie Rolls. Those are kind of the smaller candies. All right, let me pull up the timer. You guys look ready? All right, on your mark. Hold on, I can't find it. Okay, on your mark, get set, go.
Go get some. I feel like a terrible person.
All right, are all the fish gone? Oh, there's two.
I'm trying to resequence the trail.
All right, time's up. All right, so wait, why did you throw some fish back?
Because if we take all of the fish now, there will be no fish when we come back for the second round.
Exactly.
So the goal is to just take one, so we survive. I don't know if this is what we're going to talk about. I don't know.
No, I think that I want to point out your behavior was that's a jumping off point for our discussion. So it looks like we've got about I'm sorry, talking too loud. We've got about 5 fish in the water for round 2.
Unless if it's not too late, if they haven't died.
It's too late. It's too late. All right, guys. So we got a couple more. Let's see some people threw some fish back. All right. So all right, no more fish throwing back. I see you. All right, guys. So after this, we're gonna do exactly the same way. But oh shoot, you guys have to get your payout now so that we know which big candies. All right. So if you guys want to head outside to Josh and just get your candies real quick, and then we'll come back. So any fish that are still in the pond, leave them, and then turn in your fish to Josh real quick.
Okay.
We go back in the other room.
So they're gonna come back in here if you want to stay, or you can head into the bedroom. We're gonna do one more round fishing. You know, I'm watching the pond, guys. Oh, I know. I saw them. I saw them drop a few fish. Or they're getting bigger, right? In the next round, they'll be worth more. Did you get eliminated?
No, I picked up 3 and then I threw them back out.
But now you are eliminated. You need one to survive.
Oh, I didn't survive.
And that's the part of economics called charity.
It's great.
A lot of little sugar, which might be worth more than the one big one.
I was just ready to go. Somebody should have said, wait, stop, time out. Let's everybody grab one. We all agree on that, and then let's step back and wait. Yeah, but if people would listen and follow the leader, it could have been. If one person disregarded it and served his job, then everybody would have to grab as many as they could.
Is it meant to go that far?
Yeah, it is. It's just not sitting right. By doing this, I'm closer to the action.
Right.
Oh, it's sliding. Why is it sliding? She's getting there.
You got anchovies.
Yes, I want to go.
You know, there's more and more of these fish showing up. 31. There you go. I'll eat the jungle first.
Yeah, so you start with guys.
around too. Most of these ones on the edge don't count because they were thrown in after she just 10 times up. So she's only like counting like that little group right there. Those 5. Just FYI.
Yeah. Okay. Well, assuming like the Animal Protection Agency or something planted new fish in the pond, like tried to
Fishing game?
Yeah.
I don't think that they got involved with this one. It was
Wow.
It was purely economic.
Yeah. Something the government didn't get involved in. Wow.
I didn't say that. They got involved. They said nobody can put the fish back.
Oh.
You guys don't take all the fish in hands, just take them anyway.
I don't care that I was greedy and deprived this entire body of water of 31 fish. I
31. Wow.
Yep.
I now know what she said. We're gonna have a lot of leftover candies.
Yeah.
Because they were prepared in case it went either way.
Right.
Okay, more for us.
You win.
Sorry.
Yeah, stay there.
Okay, so I hope you guys are happy and full of candy. So as you can see, there's a couple fish left in the pond. Because we've waited a little while, they've gotten pretty big, so they're worth more. So in the next 30 seconds, whoever gets fish, you can turn them in for a bigger piece of candy. So you're gonna, after the 30 seconds is over, just like we did, just head to Josh and trade it in for your candy, and then we're gonna head to the next room for discussion. Okay? All right. On your mark, get set, fish. Go. Oh, I mean, candy in the water, I see. All right, guys. Looks like everybody caught all the fish, so let's go ahead and get your candy and head to the next room for discussion.
There's a similar study where have you seen the marshmallow one probably where they get in the room with one marshmallow wait 20 minutes and then we'll give you a second. That's all they sleep with.
It's pretty interesting, and then when this was good, and I mean, there were some kids who didn't eat it, there were some kids who really struggle, and there was like crying, they just want to eat the marshmallow, and it's like, you when we, Ben over here actually highlighted an interesting behavior. He threw some fish back once he realized, as we were wrapping up with the first round, that they might be worth more later. What do you guys think informs that? Yeah.
What do you like value different lights and things around? What do you value having extra like what's going to be able to survive the next fish?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so he's saying that the survival is key in order to move on to the next round where your payoff's going to be bigger, potentially, right? Because we don't even know if in the second round. Ben, did you get second round candy?
No, I didn't.
You didn't attempt? Out of the game, too. It's still really good. Can't handle it. That's a really good point. Is that you're motivated to at least stay in the game. So what's something else that we observed in terms of behavior in the first round? Yes.
That everyone wanted to get it as fast as they could because it was instinct rather than waiting for the greater outcome.
Yeah, so you're saying instinct, right? You guys acted on instinct. You guys were all very fast. You guys were reaching for the candy. You were trying to get as much as you could. And that kind of happened spontaneously, right? That just immediately happened. And you guys didn't really talk about strategy or plan. Pardon?
No one thought about the end result of if everyone takes all the fish, then no one else is going to get the bigger result.
Yeah, exactly. You weren't thinking about the end result. Yes.
And although I anticipated what the outcome was going to be, and I knew that I was trying to preserve some fish, when it became obvious as the point was it became clear that this is out of control, that there is lots of fish, even though I knew what the outcome was going to be, part of it was distinct. Even though I knew, I kind of gave in the fatalistic we're doomed, I may as well get mine too. Which is, I'm not proud of that.
Yeah, I think you're highlighting a very common reaction that people have, which is, well, Steve, you're going to take all of the all the fish that you want. What's going to stop me from doing that? I guess I'm in competition with you to get all that fish right now. Yes. That's what I do. Yeah.
This mentality he pointed out, actually that today, just say with like the government, where people feel like we're so heavily in debt, or at some point this whole thing is just going to collapse. So just give me my piece of that before it comes down, and then I'll just figure it out from there. But everybody else is grabbing. So I'll just grab something too.
Yeah, there's no thinking about long-term results, right? Like you were saying, you're not thinking about the end results of how your actions affect what's going on in the pond. So I guess, what were the incentives facing you guys? If we're thinking about what Jeff has talked about, what were the incentives? How were the incentives set up in this game? Yeah.
Personal gain. You got a lot of gain if you caught the most fish. So
personal gain. It's all about personal gain and just trying to get as many fish as you can. Yeah.
There's the subjective value. Like I don't really care what I on each. So for me, I didn't have any incentive.
Oh, you don't like candy? How? So what would you have fished for? Yeah.
Cash.
Paper. Okay. All right. There are versions of this game where we do 10-cent and 25-cent versus small and big candy, but that can get it's a lot of quarters for me to carry around personally. But maybe that would have incentivized you more. Yes.
But Ben's action influenced other people too, because they stopped and thought about it.
Yeah.
Their choices were going to have consequences. They didn't have to live with.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, the minute you did that, I did see some people dropping fish back into the water, and so maybe it does take that one person whose foresight is obvious in their behavior to kind of change things. All right. So basically, ultimately, what happened to the resource? I mean, if we're thinking about fish as resources, which they are, not only for sustenance, but for profit and for you to continue, flourishing in your life with you and your family. What is this? I mean, what happened to this resource that we need? Yes.
Okay, so I told my kids just take one, and I said watch what everybody else does. And I'm not saying that, but it's like in real life, that's what I try to teach them. You take what you need right now, and we plan, and look, and you find other resources. My philosophy would have been, okay, there's going to be another pond somewhere else, and we're going to go find that pond where everybody else isn't getting all the fish.
Yeah, go find another pond. I like it. And what you're saying is that you said ahead of time, so you said this is the plan. We're going to plan to just take one. And I think that's something that's an interesting behavior to highlight, is that you do have to stop and think about what is the next step. It can't just be kind of the incentives in this specific round were designed to make you act quickly. And so maybe that wasn't beneficial to you guys as a whole because you didn't get as many large candies as you wanted. So let's see here. How did it make you feel if anyone did take too many fish, or you felt like other people took too many fish? Yes.
Well, I wonder if there's a reflection when you look down at the pile of baby candy and think, oh, you know what? If I would have waited, that would have been all the fun size.
Yeah, it could have been the better candy.
But
But what if you
been a bigger?
Yeah, but what if you had waited? That's the thing. If you hadn't picked up, if you just picked up enough fish to survive, what do you think would have happened to the other fish? Somebody else might have picked it up. Alright, so you guys are basically all just trying to get. Yes.
So, what I did, see, my mom was next to me, she didn't tell me that. But what I was thinking is that I thought there was going to be another group of fish to bring out. And I wasn't sure, so I was going, okay, I could wait and see. But I thought, that could bring out more fish, so I'll just get a good amount out of time.
Yeah. So what you're putting out, yeah, you just assume that resource is going to regenerate, right? But in part, if you do have to wait, if you want to get more candy out of the same fish, you're going to have to wait, right? All right, so the next round, Josh, are we ready? Okay. So hopefully, I know it's kind of a tight squeeze in there, but we're going to go fishing one more time before you guys move. We're gonna do something a little different. So how many people actually are going to be fishing? I just want to get a head count. Let's split. I'm gonna go ahead and say, I just want to make sure this is even. So I would say, let's do the first 4 rows here are gonna be a group, and then all the rows in the back here, and then the back 3. Sorry, guys, I can't count. Actually, just the back 2 rows, and then the back 2 rows here, or the back 3 rows. I can't count, guys. Sorry, we're trying to split into 3 groups equally. So if we can just go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's go ahead and do what's 44 divided by 3?
Divided by 3?
Oh, no, is it?
Like 11.
No, that'd be 33.
15? About 15? All right, let's just go ahead and do the first 15 here. You guys go ahead and you're going to be a group. So what you guys have done is, let me go ahead and, all right, so you guys have now formed a partnership. So you guys have decided that you're going to purchase a pond by yourselves. And you get to fish that pond together. So you guys get to harvest whatever comes out of that pond, and nobody else gets to fish in your pond. If they do, they are eliminated. So you guys can go ahead and head over there. Don't go fishing, but you guys can go ahead and stand up for 15 people. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. In the tan hoodie, you are 15. Oh no, right, yeah, right there. So you guys, everybody in these rows up until you guys are in a group. Yeah, you just head over to the pond. You cannot touch any fish until we are all over there. All right, and the next group, the next one. Are you guys fishing? You're more than welcome to fish, or you don't have to. You don't want to. Okay, right? Yes. Yeah. All right, and then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then we got 15 in the front. All right, so front row, and then everybody in the back. You guys are also a partnership. Yes, you guys can now join, and you can head over to your pond, which Josh will show you which one your pond is.
Come here, guys.
All right, and then the final group, you guys are also a group, so go ahead and follow them. Make sure you guys know who is in your group.
You guys the third time? You guys are going to be
Can I get this area right here? Kind of see the whole room from right here.
All right, everybody. So everybody is around their pond. We've got the red group, got the green team, and we've got the blue pond over there. So something else I want to say that you guys now have. So you guys all know who is in your partnership, right? You know who's on your team, and you guys can actually talk about what you think the strategy is going to be. I want to highlight that there is also in the middle a couple of yellow fish that nobody owns. So that's also available for fishing once we go fishing. So you guys are still going to have 30 seconds to go fishing. Your entire partnership can fish in your pond, but you are not allowed to fish in other people's ponds, but you can fish in the common area. All right, so does that make sense? There's 2 rounds, exactly like last time. And then, so if we see you fishing in someone else's pond, you will be eliminated. And then, just like last time, the first round you got little candies, and the second round you got big candies. All right,
But
so
you have to get one to survive.
you do still have to have one to survive. Yes, exactly.
Everyone leave the middle pond, and then we can get it after and get a big king.
Alrighty, guys, are we ready? On your mark, get set. Again, one for survival. Go.
Oh, I know what they're doing. Actually, the group that took all the ones in the middle was the smart group because theirs can't be stolen.
Alright, guys, we've got 4 seconds. And we are done. Alright. Alright, so everybody, your pond, just collect the fish that you guys have collected. And then Josh, so just have one person deliver all the candy. You guys can, well, I mean, you guys all want your own individual candy. That doesn't make any sense. All right, so I just want to make sure that we leave the ponds as they are before we go get our candy. So if you guys want to hurry and go get your candy, then we can come back to the ponds real quick. Yeah. Well, I wanted to think it was highlights though.
Right here. All right, do we have everybody, Josh? Josh, is that everybody? We're good? All right, so you guys are back in your partnerships. And this time, the candy is worth big sizes, right, or fun size candy.
So again, you need one to survive, and however much after that, you use an individual capture. That is your candy. All right, on your mark, get set, go. Alright guys, you have 10 seconds. I think it's all, yeah, let's say it looks like all the ponds are dry. Alright guys, we are done. You guys can get your candy and head back into the other room for discussion.
Social. You gotta say, hey, you got 98. I don't agree.
Yeah, everyone died except for me.
So, dude, you see me?
There are still insensitive playing. Even when the other one is still charging.
Your legs are.
What color team were you guys?
No, I'm plugged in. Trying to lower the tension. As long as it's resting on the ground.
I like it. Yes, I suppose there are ghosts. I like it. So you were on the blue team.
I'm going to break it during lunch and do a second video for second part two. So you can have to type in whatever you want to say again.
All right, everybody. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about, I guess, some differences between this session and the last session. So when you guys get together and you have ownership over a specific pond, what were some changes you saw in terms of behavior? Teamwork. Working as a team, yes. Mass suicide. Yeah, we can talk about the blueprints plan. Yes. We saw teamwork, right? And we also saw strategy, which we did not really see in the first session. Yeah. They thought long term. They thought, how can I get to the second round with this fish? The blue team got very creative. If you guys want to elaborate, anyone want to elaborate on their plan?
It's just I don't know that anyone can take total responsibility for the plan. I think it was just kind of spontaneous. Right. So basically what we did is I was the only one who stayed alive, everybody else died. And so all our fish stayed there. I think the way I survived is actually taking stuff from the collective pond. So everybody died, and then all of our fish got bigger, so we took it in, we got like 30 big fish, and then we just distributed them out at a time.
So how do you fairly distribute them?
We set them on the ground, basically said everybody take one, and then when there was enough, we said everybody take two, and then any that were left over, I know I took an extra. It was my fee for being the one who organized.
Here's the thing, so what we're seeing is, it's basically an equal distribution of resources, but you guys have chosen to participate in that system, right? You said, you all agreed, this is how we want to do things, this is how we want our pond to run, and that's kind of the cool thing, is that you're not fighting other ponds. The way you run your pond is exactly how you guys all agreed to it, which is kind of cool. So what do we see with the yellow fish in the middle? Because I saw something very interesting,
We decided to get all the yellow fish in the middle to survive the first round, so we saved all of our fish.
Okay. Yeah, and there's no, you guys all wanted those fish, right? There's no incentive to preserve those fish, and we gotta use those up when we see them.
Where the big group got hurt, there's no barrier on us to not make the plant the same way. Pretty nice. You could have thought that as a tweak, but there's something about it being smaller that, and having seeds like the difference more able to plant.
Yeah, so the planning arose as a result of you guys having smaller groups, mainly. So what's another quality of the second session that we see that we need in order to produce a larger number of second round fish? What's another component? Yes.
Accountability. So in the first round, nobody knew. It was just this mass of people. And you just grab. The second time, you could look at each other in the face a little bit, and that made a difference. That if I want to immediately grab here and get that, maybe make a social pressure.
It's the human interaction that is a key to it, right? It's knowing that you have a partnership with somebody else, and you're trying to make sure that you guys are working together. What's another? So something that's important to remember is that you guys. I told you that you couldn't fish in other people's ponds, right? Don't you think that was also kind of key to protecting, your own resources? What do you guys think about that? Yeah.
Well, if someone would have stolen my pond, and it wouldn't have happened because it's mine. It's our team. So if someone was going to intrude on it, then it would demolish everything, and they would be disqualified as well.
Yeah, but under threat of being disqualified, nobody did that, right? Nobody eroded those barriers that we've created between ourselves socially, because you don't want to be eliminated from the game. So when you have a structure, you have an institution that protects your pond from other people, you end up having ultimately more people with larger pieces of candy, and ultimately more people that are happy. If we think about candy as something that makes people happy. Any other things that you guys thought maybe applied, things that we need in order to make that system, to make a happier system or make it more prosperous? Yeah.
Experience. The voice is experience within the second round.
Okay, yeah, so we learn from our mistakes. That's always important. Yes.
Well, I was going to say is because the first round, it was kind of a unique experience, and nobody really did it. Okay, I'm sorry. Second round, we all knew how it was going to get up, and yet we still demolished the yellow while we were preserving our own. So it's interesting that even though we had an opportunity, and I think somebody did attempt to say, hey, don't take the yellow, we save it all for all of us later, distribute it. Didn't work. Even though we knew what we should do with our own.
Right.
But when there was still some resources that were commonly available, we still exhausted it.
Yeah.
No one looked up.
And I heard somebody say, people are people are people. Like, this is just how it's always going to be, right? Even if you have your partnership and you have your pond with your team, and there's still a common good. I mean, there's no incentive to protect that common good together. So is there? I actually also heard. So I believe Ben may have asked, well, what if is this the last round? What if we want to keep going? And so imagining a world where, yes, I mean, in reality, this differs from the real world because there's endless rounds when it comes to resources. And so thinking about how we want to move forward. I think that in the real world, those fish would have procreated, and we got more fish, and they wouldn't have just gotten bigger. We also would have more baby fish. So I think that that's one way that it differs from the real world. What's another way that you guys think that exercise differs from the real world? Yes.
There's other factors than just fishing that pollution or any kind of factor.
Yeah. So if I had said oh well, the green pond, you only get I'm trying to think of something gross, candy corn. I don't like candy corn, but right, so you polluted the fish, so they're not really Any other ways that you guys think that the real world differs a little bit? Yes.
The bleaching all died and they're back alive.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, they still got to get their candy despite being ghosts. Yes.
There were no environmentalist groups screaming at us for depopulating like 5 different ponds.
Right. But that's kind of an interesting question because we ended up with more fish for longer as a result of trying to protect them, even for our own personal gain, right? And that's kind of interesting when you think about it because it sounds really selfish, but really you want bigger candy, you want better candy, but that motivates you to protect the fish for longer. Yes.
I think we manage better the fish when we're in our smaller groups versus as one. I mean, at the very beginning as one large group, I didn't manage them at all very well. But I think sometimes on the national level, with government and stuff, they try to manage things when at a smaller level, as neighborhoods and families and different institutions, we manage things much better.
Yeah, so the smaller the group, the more effective that management can be. That's a really good point. And then, so what if maybe, okay, so let's say you guys were you're in your small pond, but I came around and I said, okay, whatever you guys fish, I'm going to take it, and I'm going to disperse it back to you guys. You guys all deserve, you guys all deserve 2 pieces of candy. How would that have been how would that change your behavior in that situation? If I said, okay, whatever fish you catch, I'm going to make sure that each of you gets the right amount.
It depends on all the situations, all the rules and what you said. If you just said that, I might not be so excited about getting the fish, but if you said there was a consequence for not being involved, then I might be more willing to still gather fish.
Yeah, good point. So if I had forced you, if I said like you have to participate in the system, otherwise you're going to be punished in some way, then maybe you'd be more interested in doing it. Yes.
And we have to trust you.
Yeah.
You're actually going to do it.
Yeah.
And when you distributed the fish, what if it was the candy I don't like?
Exactly, and I think that's a good point. So what if I said, yeah, okay, I'm going to take it all, and I'm going to give each of you 2 pieces of candy. Well, you don't even like candy, so it's like, wow, I don't want it. Why are you giving me 2 pieces of candy that somebody else may want? So I think that's an interesting way to think about, subjective value, which we've talked about, and resource allocation. All right, guys, we are over time, so we're going to move into lunch, but I think that we're definitely going to cover some more of these topics right after lunch. So we're going to head out and then to the right there, and then this is like a quick little left, so you're going to follow the crowd. It's very easy. It's the legislative dining room.